Hey guys, it's BlockchainBrad, and today I'm very excited to talk with none other than Josh Fraser. Josh, thank you very much, mate, for coming onto the channel today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
No worries, mate. So, for everybody who's not familiar with Josh, he is the co-founder of Origin. And Origin is a very exciting blockchain project. It is a protocol, it's a platform, it's an ecosystem, and we're going to find out all about it right now, thanks to Josh. So, Josh, you're the co-founder of Origin. That's exciting, but you're also much more than that when I dug deep into your background. You're Scottish born, you argue you're a computer geek, which is always a good thing, and a serial entrepreneur, but you've also had a lot of experience as a CEO and a CTO of very successful businesses and enterprises and startups. You have co-founded VC-backed companies. You've been involved with a company known as DIN or Forage as the CTO in San Francisco. You've also been the CTO of EventVue, which was a social networking company for events. And you were the CEO of Torbit, which was a very important bootstrap business that was eventually, as I understand, sold off because of its success. And what that's about is performance measurement, optimizing tools for the internet, and particularly for big companies like Google even. So that's a really, really impressive list of achievements you've made, and you're certainly a leader by nature. So can you tell us a bit about your background yourself?
Yeah, well, you covered a lot of it. One small correction, Torbit was actually backed by, it was venture backed, and so we had some great investors who are a part of that.
Right.
But yeah, I've been playing with computers ever since I was 10 years old. My dad bought me an Apple IIe computer,
right.
And I've been ever since. Studied computer science in college, and like you said, built three venture-backed companies, going back and forth between CEO and CTO roles. Got into crypto really early, actually. It was back in 2010 when I mined my first Bitcoin.
Wow, so you were very early.
Very, very early into Bitcoin. It was, unfortunately, it was at that time. It's very hard to take it seriously,
right?
Because where Bitcoin faucet websites would give you a Bitcoin for free. So,
yep.
It took about an hour, if I remember right, to mine a Bitcoin on a laptop. So
right.
It wasn't obvious at all what it was going to become today.
That's incredible, considering what has become of Bitcoin as I guess the Genesis blockchain design. But interestingly, you also have, as you said, a very strong background educationally. You are a graduate of the Clemson University, so you really are stepping up to the plate when it comes to backing what your experience with equal educational knowledge.
Yeah, I've been playing with computers a long time, and also, building products, products that are used by, tens of thousands of people. And and likewise, we're assembling a team here with a lot of really deep technical experience. And people understand how to build products that are going to be used by, thousands and hopefully someday millions of people.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of millions, it's an interesting background you have. Clearly, you are working out of a shopping center. We're very fortunate to have, an exciting background to distract us sometimes. But what is interesting about your protocol also is that you argue to be the sharing economy without intermediaries. And that, I suppose, that last part of the phrase is important because we already have sharing economies in the centralized world. So let's talk about the what essentially of Origin. What essentially is it in a nutshell?
Yeah, so we're creating tools for the creation of decentralized marketplaces. We want you to, we think of companies in marketplace in the sharing economy as being peer-to-peer. You think of Airbnb as being a peer-to-peer marketplace. But in reality, it's not. It's actually a peer-to-massive corporate monopoly to peer marketplace.
Right.
And we want to get back to, we want to cut out that middleman. We want to make it truly peer-to-peer. And blockchain technology gives us that possibility for the first time in history. Where now buyers and sellers can find each other on a smart contract that lives on the blockchain, and we don't need some trusted third party sitting in between making introductions. And so that's the core idea at the center of Origin, is cutting out middlemen, cutting out those intermediaries, and enabling the creation of decentralized marketplaces of all sorts of different verticals and different bringing together buyers and sellers across a number of different types of applications.
Right, and we hear that argument again, time and time again, with excellent companies that you want to cut out the middlemen. That is essentially the premise of decentralization. But let's dig deeper into the sharing economy specifically, because you are a niche, I suppose, in the broad spectrum of decentralized businesses. Let's dig into I guess, the premise for the iterations that you started with as a decentralized sharing economy. What prompted you fundamentally to really drive this forward?
Yeah, it started about end of 2016. My co-founder Matt and I were really looking at digging in deep into Solidity, learning how to code in the space, trying to get up to speed on all the decentralized technology that was being developed. And as we were looking at this, everyone from hardcore anarchists to Goldman Sachs were saying the same thing.
Right.
Which is all of these multi-billion-dollar companies like Airbnb and Uber and Fiverr and Postmates and Handy, and go on and on, are about to be disintermediated by the blockchain. Right. And that the blockchain is going to get rid of all of them.
Right.
And so we started digging into it. First question was, is that even technically possible? Is it actually possible to create a decentralized marketplace on the blockchain? Mm-hmm. And so to find out, first thing we did was we built one. So you can actually check it out. Our demo's live on the Ethereum testnet today.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a Craigslist style marketplace, sort of a simplest type of two-sided marketplace that you can have. But it's live on our website, so you can go to demo.originprotocol.com.
Right. And Josh, can I just ask you, when did you actually do that? Was that last year?
We got a very sort of crappy version of it built we started working on it probably June of last year, mm-hmm. And then we pushed that to live to testnet into December.
Right. Okay. That's exciting that people can actually go and tangibly see something.
You can actually play with it. And while the application itself is very minimal and sort of a toy app mm-hmm. in a lot of ways, when you understand what's happening, it's really cool. Right. Because there's no central servers that play it off, right? You're talking directly to IPFS and the Ethereum network, and there's no, we're not running any servers, that are hosting that content or anything like that.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about this in the context, I suppose, of the premise behind these companies. Obviously you mentioned some important ones like Airbnb, Uber. They all are centralized by nature, but you have outlined some of the shortcomings that are related to those.
Yeah, let me break some of those down. So, the first shortcoming that everyone sees is really obvious is the fees that these marketplaces are taking. Right. Because decentralized marketplaces are taking 20, 30, sometimes 40% out of every transaction. Mm-hmm. And so when you cut out the middleman, the fees go with it. Right. And like you said, markets like to be efficient. We like to squeeze middlemen out at every opportunity. Right. And when you think about it, like the fees that these marketplaces take made a lot of sense in the early days. It takes a lot of money to create a company like Uber or like Airbnb. Mm-hmm. And so in a way, it was justified in the beginning. But what we've seen is as these companies have gotten bigger and become more and more like monopolies, instead of decreasing their fees, have actually increased their fees and started taking a larger and larger cut out of every transaction. Right. And so we think this is, this is sort of a natural progression that companies take as they become more like monopolies. Mm-hmm. They tend to abuse that power. And so, taking fees out, yes, we have to pay miners to secure the network, but Origin, as a protocol, isn't taking any fees at all. So you've really got a 0% commission, sort of marketplace for buyers and sellers to find each other.
I see.
The second advantage that we have over the centralized solutions out there is just removing that single point of failure. Mm-hmm. What we've seen with companies like Airbnb and Uber is they've been banned in cities all around the world by overzealous regulators. Right. So Uber's banned right now in London, in Vancouver. They were banned for a while in Austin, Texas, and countless other cities around the world. Mm-hmm. The same is true for Airbnb. Just here in San Francisco, just a couple of weeks ago, 4,000 listings were disappeared from Airbnb's platform, and the reason for that was the city of San Francisco said, all right, the regulations that passed aren't working, so we're going to actually start fining Airbnb, the company, $1,000 a day for every unregistered listing on their platform.
I see.
And that 4,000 listings were deleted.
Right.
And so we can't change the laws, right? We can't change the local laws or impact that, but we can, remove that single point of failure where, overzealous governments can't come in and, kill 4,000 listings with one fell swoop.
Right.
And the other side of this is sometimes these companies themselves like to pick and choose favorites. They like to say who isn't, they like to be the arbitrators of who is and isn't welcome on their platforms. Mm-hmm. We've seen Uber and Lyft ban people for life from their services for as small a sin as sending out a tweet that the company saw that they didn't like. And they decided it would be, politically advantageous to, ban these people from ever using their services.
Right. So,
and so I think that's way too much power for any central company to have. And we want to maximize personal liberty and allow buyers and sellers to transact freely with whoever they'd like.
So essentially, in that respect too, you're also democratizing the system and certainly democratizing the commerce marketplace.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about in terms of innovation? That's one of the cornerstones of your company. Arguably, there's a lack of innovation in some of these centralized models. How are you addressing that?
I think we're doing it in a number of ways. I think what we see over time is that companies that as they become more and more have more and more of a monopoly position, they stop innovating. They become more and more, we even see this with Google, right? There used to be a very, very innovative company.
Right.
Today, that rate of innovation is really slowing down. And I think that, by being open source, by being decentralized, by having a thing that's really owned by the people, there's less of a limitation on the innovation, right? Where people are free to continue iterating on it and developing on it. Right. And part of the reason is we're getting rid of the proprietary data silos that these companies have.
Right.
And so in our model, instead of, Origin doesn't hold your data, it's owned by everyone, it's owned by no one, it's public on the blockchain, and it's also portable across all these different marketplaces. And so any new startup that wants to read or write to our data layer is completely free to do that.
I see.
And so we think that's really exciting and will enable a whole new phase of innovation because we're getting rid of those gatekeepers.
Right.
That are controlling your data.
And clearly also you're precluded from that kind of censorship model that we've seen in the past because of those things you're explaining. And because it's distributed and it disseminates throughout the users, it challenges degrees of censorship and control.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, when you think about how do you go up against multi-million and multi-billion-dollar companies,
yes.
How do you start chipping away at that? And that's where this model of the token and rewarding the early participants is really important.
Yes, we're going to talk about that, Josh. We're definitely going to go there in detail.
All right.
But let's get stuck into a little bit more of your protocol because it's an interesting thing.
Sure.
Let's clarify it in what it is because obviously we have blockchain initiatives, but you clearly are trying to encourage and espouse the use of your protocol for other businesses. So let's talk about that in the context of attracting the enterprise and I guess business models onto your platform.
Sure. So the main thing we're developing right now and working on is this library called Origin.js. Origin.js just as the name suggests, is just a JavaScript library, abstracts away all of the complexities of dealing with the blockchain.
Right.
So as a developer, you don't need to know really anything about what's happening under the covers. We abstract all of that away, and we make it really easy for developers to create decentralized listings, to book them, to view the calendar and what the availability is, cancel bookings, make bookings, whatever you want to do. All of that can be done from our JavaScript library. In tandem with that, we're developing a demonstration app that developers can take and fork and use to create their own marketplaces on top of the blockchain.
Right.
So we're built on top of Ethereum, and then we're using IPFS for the data layer and moving, to too expensive to store data on Ethereum. And so everything that isn't critical to transactions is all the metadata is stored on IPFS,
right?
Which is a lot more makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And so Origin.js is it's under active development today, but we're already signing up dozens and dozens of partners. I think over 30 partners today have already committed to building on top of the Origin platform. And so we have different marketplaces, lots of other cryptocurrency projects that are committed to building on this, as well as an increasing number of traditional businesses that are coming to us and expressing an interest in getting involved and looking at how they can start to move some of their inventory onto the blockchain as well.
Right, that's exciting given that you said you have over 30 companies already showing interest, and more so, they're actually contacting you and discussing how they're going to utilize your platform. But let's talk about competitors as well, because obviously there are other like structures, even in the decentralized models, you'd no doubt know about. So firstly, how concerned are you of these competitors without naming names? And secondly, what differentiates you in terms of the tech, the fundamentals?
Yeah, so we don't have anyone who's like a head-on competitor. And, in this space, I don't even know what we have anyone we can, consider a competitor.
Okay.
There's other people who are working on this project. I think we probably have more in common than we,
right.
than anything. As far as, being on the same mission here. But
right.
The two projects we get compared to most frequently, first is OpenBazaar, and the second is District 0x. The biggest differentiator, between Origin and both of those is our focus on fractional usage of assets and services.
Right.
And we're talking about the sharing economy, talking about, loaning out surplus inventory of your apartment, your car, your time. Really, you need some way of representing, the fractional usage of that asset.
Right.
Or it could be, your own time as well. And so we're figuring out a sort of novel way to represent that on the blockchain, and we're really the only project that we've seen now is really focusing on that as sort of a key differentiator on how to do that.
Well, let's unpack that now, because that's obviously
Sure.
a key point. How are you doing that with your fractionalization of the data?
So what we're doing is we're creating these listings where you can say, here's the asset that I'm going to make available. And then you could break it up into different intervals that are then represented on that blockchain. And those intervals are the smallest bookable unit of that asset or service. So, if that's your apartment, an interval could represent one night stay in your apartment. And then, if it's maybe your car that you're loaning out, maybe it's bookable in 15-minute intervals. And so what this allows us to do is sort of a bare minimum, just a very simple array on the smart contract of here are all the different intervals that are bookable. The smart contract doesn't need to have any understanding of what that interval is.
Right.
It doesn't have to do any fancy date-time calculations, computing, like date-time math is really hard. All of that is broken out and stored and computed in the DApp. So that's where our JavaScript library comes into play, does all the heavy lifting, all the computations to figure out what those intervals represent. But all of it is, digitally signed and cryptographically strong, so that you can know with confidence that you are getting, the same thing that you're being promised.
Right. And what's exciting also is that you argue that, you're unique in that design. So you're already a front runner and in pole position in the marketplace currently. Let's talk about, though, now the users themselves, or more importantly, the developers. What are you doing exactly to empower, is the terminology I've read in your white paper, but even offer the developer to really move across? And there's some examples here you've referenced, transferring direct financial value, looking at indirect and direct strategic value, but what essentially is it that's the carrot for the developer?
So there's so we have over 30 partners that have committed to building on Origin already.
Right.
And our pitch to them has been really simple. There's three things that we offer people who want to build on Origin JS. So, the first thing is you can get to market faster. Right? We've got an experienced team of developers and engineers, product designers, from right here in Silicon Valley, with a lot of experience in building products and taking it to market. We have an active, a live demo on testnet, and so by building on top of our platform, you can get to market a lot faster. You can actually put stuff in the hands of your users a lot faster than you can if you go at it alone.
Right.
The second way we can help our partners is through promotion. A big part of any project in this space is the community that you build around your project.
Right.
And there's a lot that we can do to help promote our partners. For example, every week we tweet about we tweet about our partners. We post about them to 21,000 people on our Telegram channel. And we do that every week. So we're like, we're only successful when our partners are successful.
Right.
And so we're, working really, really hard to, make sure that our partners are successful, and that way we're going to be successful as well.
I'm really glad also that you mentioned that, Josh, because there are so many. Obviously, you may be aware I'm involved in a lot of blockchain initiatives in Asia, and there is a real dearth of communication with some of these projects to the detriment of their own, iterations and own success. So it's great to hear that you are taking the community really seriously, because certainly, from our perspective, we are taking you guys seriously.
Yeah, I think community is just as important, if not more important, than the technology we're building.
Right.
The example I like to give all the time is like you can take Bitcoin's open source, right? You can grab it, you can fork it with one click in GitHub, right? It's that easy to do. But like forking the community is a lot harder, right? You can do it, as we've seen, but it's a lot harder. And it's a community that really gives the value to anything that
right.
you do.
And it's often quite divisive. It bifurcates often even the sentiment of those projects as well, as we've seen from the original, blockchain designs. We won't name names. But if we could go across now to your use cases for a moment, your use case verticals. It's interesting that you mentioned some of them, but what essentially, if you could give us just like 3 or 4 examples of how you could essentially apply this protocol, in context, let's say if we're thinking in a business frame for a moment.
So I think looking at our initial partners is a great example of just how diverse the type of applications can be.
Right.
So we're working, with services companies like Kenya that are building on top of Origin. We have BToken, which is doing home sharing. Also, another San Francisco-based team with engineers from Uber and Google and Facebook that are building on that project. We have like other marketplaces like Odom, which is an education marketplace, that's being built on top of us as well. But if you look across our partners, there's every kind of marketplace you can imagine, from food delivery to ride sharing to
insurance. I believe you got insurance, all kinds of things.
I don't know that we haven't even focused on insurance yet, but you can you can start to you can sort of see that coming out as an opportunity. We're working. One of our technology partners is WeTrust, which are working really actively on this problem of how do we solve insurance in a decentralized way.
Right.
And so we're working with them as a technology partner because insurance is one of those things that is really valuable if you're renting out your home or your car or something like that. Obviously, Airbnb offers their $1 million policy, and it's cool if we could offer a decentralized alternative to that.
Yes, let's talk about that for a moment. I'm glad you, once again, broached Airbnb. How do you think they're looking at you guys? I often wonder this from their positions. Do you think they're trying to decentralize also?
So we have a good number of friends who work there. They're in our home. We live in the same city. We have a lot of friends there. They certainly talk about it. There's an internal, they have Slack or whatever they use there where they're all just sort of chatting about this. So we're certainly on the radar. We're certainly thinking about it. I think for Airbnb, they're obviously looking at cryptocurrency, but they're coming at it from a different lens.
Right.
It's very easy. They're obviously see the excitement around cryptocurrency, want to dip their toes in the water, be involved. But they also are sitting in a great place right now. They love their data silos. They like having control and the ownership that they have. And from their perspective, they also see all the ins and outs of all the customer service stuff that they're dealing with every day. They see all of the challenges that they have. And so it's hard for them to sort of envision how you could possibly decentralize this stuff.
Sure, and I think the reason why we ask is because, obviously as people interested in blockchain and no doubt the innovations that you're bringing to the fore, is that we envisage that they have capital. They have a position in which they could arguably transition if they had the skill sets, they had the devs, they had the team, to then move across into and transition into what is arguably an essential move at some point as we move into the decentralized business frame. So, my question, I suppose, is, does the degree of capital that some of these centralized companies have concern you in any way? Should they take it more seriously?
I should be. I don't know, right? If I were sitting in Airbnb's shoes, I don't know how I would be responding to this, right? I think they're not threatened by us at all. And it's not entirely clear, one, how quickly we'll be able to displace Airbnb. And, it may be that we start, taking off in some other marketplaces first, right? It's not obvious that, Airbnb is going to be the first to go down. If we are, it's going to be Airbnb in cities where Airbnb is completely banned. Sure. Right. It's not going to be coming after their core market or their core business. It's going to be going after Airbnb in cities where Airbnb doesn't have a chance. I see. So essentially, it's a trickle before the full flow of the decentralized models that you're bringing to the I guess the business table. But let's talk about that in terms of statistics, in terms of numbers, with regard to the kind of numbers of people who are going to potentially utilize this, globally even, or even if we start with the US. How big is the market? Well, the market is huge because it's not just Airbnb and it's not just in the United States. It's marketplaces everywhere, right? So we're trying to displace not one, but dozens of multi-million or hundreds of multi-million and multi-billion-dollar companies with open source protocols. Right. I mean, that's the audacity of what we're trying to do here. Is we're saying we think that open source protocols have a shot at replacing hundreds of multi-million-dollar companies. So let's get this clear as well. Essentially, because you're the protocol underneath many of these businesses, you've already articulated there's 30 that are coming on board to the Origin platform. But essentially, does that mean that the scope is so vast because of simply the different industries that you could represent? Yeah, that's a huge part of it. We also think about the unrepresented people today. There's 2 billion people on this planet who are unbanked, don't have bank accounts, don't have credit cards, and they just have absolutely no chance of using something like an Uber or an Airbnb today because those services require a bank account as a prerequisite for using their service. And as a result, you've got 2 billion people on this planet, which, by the way, most of them have cell phones at this point. They have smartphones, and therefore have access to cryptocurrency. And so for billions of people on this planet, their very first experience with a digital marketplace of any kind will be cryptocurrency based, built on something like Origin. And so we think that's incredibly exciting. We're going to be opening up new opportunities for free trade with billions of people who have never had a chance to do that before. Right. So once again, you're not precluded by the nature of the societal positions of a country. You're not precluded by the developing, I guess, aspects of some countries is what I'm alluding to. So Josh, just with regard to the components, it's outlined that there are key components to your business model. You have a decentralized app, you have the shared data layers, and you also have the Origins Community Fund. All really exciting components and key to your design. Let's talk about those in detail. We've mentioned the app, but why is the shared layer so important, the shared data layer, and more importantly, the Origin Community Fund? Yeah, so the shared data layer is really important. There was this sort of the third reason that we tell people you should build on top of Origin, and that's because you get a shared network effects. So you think about all of the different marketplaces you use today. You have a separate password and account for every login for every single one of them. You have a separate username and password for Uber and Lyft and Airbnb and Fiverr. And every service you use, you have a different username and password. And all of the reputation and data around that is stored on their servers, and there's no portability. You can't take that reputation with you. And so even if you've built up this reputation on Uber as an amazing driver with thousands of rides on Uber, well, then you want to go over to Lyft, and you've got to start over from scratch. Your reputation doesn't come with you. And as a user, the same thing is true. Now you have all these different accounts you have to manage. What's interesting about when you go to the blockchain is that all of the partners that are building on top of us have already given up a proprietary data silo. They've all said it's going to be on the blockchain, it's all going to be public anyway.
Right.
So if all our data is going to be public anyway, we might as well get the advantage of speaking the same language. And so now what we can do is we can have standards, and that's really what we're doing, is we're creating standards so that all these different unaffiliated marketplaces will all do stuff in the same way. And we get a huge advantage from doing that, because you as a user now, when you've gone through all of the trouble of figuring out how to get onboarded into this new crazy world, you've figured out how to get Ethereum, you figured out how not to lose your private keys,
right.
You've figured out how to deal with MetaMask and how to send tokens to someone. Once you've gone through that process one time, now you're set up and ready to go. And as you've taken your Ethereum wallet, you've attached your origin identity to it. Now you're ready to go, as you've got a sort of this user account that can work across all these dozens of different marketplaces, and you've got one universal login for all of them. So you can think of it as sort of a Facebook Connect, but in a completely decentralized way. It's not owned by any one company. Instead, you own it, and it's all sort of public. And now all your reputation and ratings come with you across all these different services.
So essentially, each of these business parties can control, as autonomous actors, they can control their data. And essentially, you're providing for a one-stop ID shop, so that it's, we don't have to keep going through the process. But I wanted to ask you, in relation to these businesses also with the B2B model, is what's the system that you offer for these businesses? Is it a very refined system so that that outlines the negotiation, it outlines the business model as you bring in these businesses? Is that all very crystal clear when these businesses call you up?
Yeah, I think we do. We take the time to explain to our partners sort of what we're building, how it all works. People, we're chatting with people in all different levels of sort of understanding of blockchain, how this technology works. We have some partners who are very technically savvy, and others that we bring up to speed and educate. But we're very sort of open and transparent about what we're doing here, and we do our best to just be really upfront with everyone about how this model works, and helping people understand token economics and how this comes into play in this sort of a revolutionary new business models that it unlocks.
Right.
It looks very different from traditional business models that people are used to. You charge a customer this much, you take this fee.
Sure. Well, Josh, in that respect, what I guess I'm alluding to is, are these deals signed, and are they concrete in the origin file system? If I went and had a look and tried to understand more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So so everyone whose logos on our website, we have a signed contract with all those partners. Right,
and obviously that's a very economically advantageous agreement for you as a company.
So there's no financial exchange there. It's purely around co-marketing each other, and also a letter of intent on their part. That they're going to build on top of our platform.
I see. So it's, the plans are in the pipeline right now for it to all be mutually beneficial.
Absolutely.
Economically, down in the future as you become much more active in the space. Let's talk about now finally the Origin Community Fund with regard to those three components. What is it, and why is it so exciting?
So it's exciting because, like I said already, we're only successful if, our partners are successful. We're only successful if people actually use this. And so what we want to do is we want to, community fund. We haven't created it yet, but this is in our plans. Is to incentivize developers to build on top of our platform. So the first thing we're going to do once the platform is ready for developers to start building on top of is we want to incentivize people to actually do that. And we want to make sure that we're giving this as best a chance we can of success. And the way we're going to be successful is by getting developers building on top of this platform.
Of course.
So we're going to, we're going to help incentivize that as much as we can.
Sure. Well, with regard to challenges, obviously now in the future, one of the key points you've raised is this mainstream chasm that we see currently, trying to move into that phase of mainstream adoption. So how do you sort of bridge the chasm?
So it's a question of sort of where is this going to take off first?
Right.
We talked already about, the unbanked. I think there's a good chance that, that's where it's going to, those other marketplaces we're going to start seeing pop up first, because, there are no centralized alternatives to worry about. I think we're going to see marketplaces pop up in wherever otherwise censored or regulated, right? The Airbnb in the cities where Airbnb is banned.
Sure.
Examples like that. And I also think that, maybe the very first thing we're going to see are marketplaces that are native to crypto. We already see people selling Binance accounts on eBay,
right.
Because Binance, shut off sign-ups, and now they're going for hundreds of dollars on eBay. We've seen people do swapping allocation for hot pre-sales, like Origin Protocol, and so we see people, already, trading that in secondary markets. We've seen things like CryptoKitties. And the advantage of all of these types of things is that those users already understand how cryptocurrency works. They know how to use MetaMask. They know how to store their private keys. All of the stuff that you need to be successful in using a marketplace. And so we're very excited about exploring those types of crypto native marketplaces.
Right.
And I think there's a good chance that's where we're going to see stuff take off first.
Right. Well, you've obviously broached the untapped regions of the world, and certainly the untapped markets specifically. So let's talk about marketing within those regions, particularly because clearly you're aware that even discussing some of these the lack of some of these centralized economies non-existing in certain regions of the world, and obviously being a place in which you could certainly provide a service there. What are you doing in terms of marketing for these regions?
Very, very little. Our marketing, we've done essentially no paid marketing promotion at all.
Okay.
But in spite of that, our community is just absolutely phenomenal, right? So our community are the ones who are spreading the word, telling their friends. All of the growth you've seen at Origin and all the community we have, it's 100% organic. We're not paid for it. We're not buffered as well. It's our community is just really. I think this idea and this mission has really captured the imagination of a lot of people, and a lot of people believe in this and want to be a part of it.
Sure.
And so our community have done just an incredible job at spreading the word and bringing their friends in and helping get the word out. At some point, will it make sense for us to actually invest more in sort of more conventional marketing? Maybe. We're not opposed to it, but as of right now, it's all about our community, and we're represented in every country in the world by people who just believe in this mission.
Well, they say that word of mouth is the most powerful marketing there is, so that fits the bill there. If we could talk about now, Josh, your team. It's interesting that on your website there's 6 core members, but in fact you have several more when you look deeper. So rather than speak of each individual member, can you tell us what are the core strengths of the team? What really sets them apart?
So we have an incredibly experienced team. I'll call out a few people who are really notable. So, my co-founder Matt was early YouTube, was part of, his 25th employee at YouTube, third product manager there. Part of that acquisition to Google, got to, learned a ton from those early days of that company and going through that phase of explosive growth at YouTube. From there, was part of introducing monetization onto the YouTube platform. So he's the person to blame for the ads that you see on YouTube today.
Right.
From there, Matt left Google and was part of 2 other startups as VP of product. And both of those companies went on to be acquired and had very successful outcomes.
Yes.
So Matt is a very a really good skill at like picking successful companies. He's free for free on the previous companies he's worked for as far as having successful acquisitions.
Yes.
So he's really good at spotting good ideas. He got into Ethereum really early as well, so he was part of the Ethereum crowd sale. And so Matt is, an incredible partner for me as a co-founder of Origin. Our head of community is Andrew Hyde. He was the first employee at Techstars, which is a startup incubator in Colorado. He's also the founder of Startup Weekend, which has thrown hackathons, hundreds of hackathons, or even thousands of hackathons in countries all over the world. And so, he was the first person who came to mind. I've known Andrew for over a decade. But I was thinking, who do I know who, has a global network, understands how to build community? Mm-hmm. He was the first person who came to mind, and we were thrilled that he decided to join us.
So you actively outsourced a lot of these really highly skilled, team members. It sounds like.
Yeah, I went to a lot of people I've known for years. Mm-hmm. My experience of building companies, have a really good network of, other entrepreneurs and other people in this space. So they were, first people I went to. Stan James is our lead blockchain engineer. Mm-hmm. I've also known him for a decade, right? Knew he was excited about blockchain, knew he was an incredible engineer, had unique background in game design. Right. And it's funny how much like game design comes into play when you start thinking about token economics and managing incentives.
Yes, I've actually heard that quite a lot from different devs as well. And what's interesting too, without obviously going too much into each of the individuals, because we could talk for hours, is that the fundamental, industries that are covered are entrepreneurship. You're obviously covering the tech through engineering, strong engineering skills, and very strong business savvy in your team as well. They're the three that came up when I started making notes. Would you argue that's pretty much the three core areas that really consolidate the strengths and assets of the team?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's we think about sort of the two main areas of a business are the technology and the community that we're building. Mm-hmm. But our team, I think almost everyone on our team today has been an entrepreneur themselves before. Yeah. And I think that's a really unique advantage in that, particularly as we're working really hard, I can sort of trust that everyone is able to make decisions and move quickly, and allows us to be an incredibly effective team. And we've seen it just by how the number of partnerships that we've been able to sign, the amount of technology we've been able to build and put out there in the world, help the size of our community. All of this is just possible not only by our core team, but our extended team as well. So we have, maybe 20, 30 contributors who've committed code to our GitHub. Our website's been translated in 17 different languages just by volunteers in our community.
Wow.
And so it's that it's that larger community that really makes all of this possible.
Right, and in terms of that, Josh, as well, are you currently hiring more and more team members?
We are. So looking for, main hires right now, JavaScript engineers and Solidity engineers. Those are the core hires we're looking for. And the number one way we hire is from our own community. So the best way to get involved and be a part of this is to jump in. So we do all of our communication, collaboration in public. We have a Discord where we do, our team's in there every day just working. You can see what we're working on. You can jump in and look at the open issues on GitHub. 100% open source, communications open source. And so you can jump in. It's very, very easy to see what we're working on any given day. You can actually jump in and start contributing. And so what we're, sort of the way we do hiring at Origin is very different. In that the best way of getting a job here is to just jump in, just start contributing. If you're interested in being more involved, we can upgrade you to a contractor. We can start paying you so we can get more time thinking about Origin, working on Origin. And the very best people we want to bring on is full-time employees. So,
absolutely. And it's interesting also because, sorry to interrupt, but it's reminiscent of Next, which is another company that's really well known in the space, because their argument is do the work first and then let's talk. So essentially what's great about this model is you get to see the work rather than the talk.
And I think it's better for both parties, right? We get to see what it's like to work with you, and you also get a sense of what it's like to work with us as well, right?
Sure.
We can see, is this something that is this a place where I can see myself working and being
Sure.
part of this?
And it also makes for a more productive enterprise as well. But if we could now talk about something we were discussing in the beginning, and that is your token. Many people want to know more about it. Firstly, what is its fundamental purpose?
So there's two fundamental purposes that are both really, really important. The first is incentive mechanism, and the second is governance.
Mm-hmm.
So breaking those two apart a little bit, incentive mechanism is ensuring the health and the growth of the network. Mm-hmm. And so when we were designing this network, we said one of the worst things that could happen is if we have this place that is just flooded with scammers and people who are just putting crap up there and scamming people. And it's very attractive. There's obviously a lot of scammers in this place, a lot of people who are like taking advantage of it. And so we said we have to build a mechanism to prevent that. We have to ensure that we have a way to police, but for the network to be self-policing.
Right.
And so at the same time, we also want to encourage the growth of a network. We want to incentivize positive behaviors and punish bad behavior. Mm-hmm. And so that's the main purpose of our token is this incentive mechanism. So we reward positive behaviors. So if you make a booking on the network, you get a cash back in the form of Origin tokens. Just like when you use your credit card company gives you this cash back reward points. Mm-hmm. We do the same thing with Origin tokens for making a booking, for leaving a review. Now, if you have to pay Ethereum gas cost to leave a review on someone, maybe no one's ever going to do that.
Right.
So we have to incentivize it. We have to make sure that people are doing that. You're paid in Origin tokens to incentivize that behavior because reviews are really beneficial and valuable to the network.
Also, in that respect, fundamentally beneath that incentive scheme is the utility itself, is that you are fundamentally a utility token. Is that right?
Absolutely. And that is absolutely critical to the health and the growth of a network. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't have that, the network doesn't grow, and we get overrun with scammers and fraudulent listings, and no one wants to be there. Sure. So it's very, very core to the functioning of the network.
Right.
So we reward positive behaviors, and then we punish bad actors by having you stake token. So if you want to post a listing on the network, you actually have to have Origin token. You have to stake it, fully refundable, but if the community votes you as some sort of scammer or bad actor, you'll forfeit those tokens, and in that way we can ensure the health and the growth of the network.
That's interesting.
So that's the first use case.
That's very interesting.
The second one is governance. So we think a lot of projects. I'll say this. So as experienced founders, the one thing we know for sure is that we're not going to get everything right on the first try.
Right.
It's very, and so I think a lot of projects have sort of, you're putting everything out there without a plan for what happens for the stuff that we didn't foresee. What about the stuff that we didn't predict was going to happen? What about the mistakes that we made and we didn't know were mistakes?
Sure.
And so the governance model is, how do we plan ahead for those decisions? Those decisions we're not even sure about what they're going to be today. Mm-hmm. How do we create a mechanism for our community to decide what the right course of action is when those decisions come up? Mm-hmm. And how do we allow them to make that decision? Because we don't want to have too much power or control over this. We want to create these marketplaces which are governed by a set of open and fair and transparent rules, right, instead of terms of some corporate ruler. And we don't want to just replace it and become that corporate ruler ourselves.
Otherwise, that's entirely counterintuitive to the very premise you stand for, which is the decentralized nature.
Exactly.
Right.
And so that's really, really important to us, that we're giving the control of this to the community, and that the community has a voice in the big decisions for the network. So whether that's, we've seen these brutal civil wars in other communities, right? Bitcoin community is a great example of these nasty forks when people don't just decide on which direction the project could go. And I don't know if a good governance model can solve that, but it's certainly worth a shot.
Right, and just in terms of the degree of, the requisites rather for some degree of, overarching or just, very broad referenced controls, as you mentioned before, is that ideally you'd love to have a very decentralized model where there is no degree of, in-house governance. But just how imperative from your experience, obviously you know of many different blockchain projects, is that, initial degree of governance, and obviously you're planning on evolving that so that it becomes less and less potent as you emerge as a decentralized model. But would you argue that there is an imperative for some mechanism for governance, regardless, throughout the iterations of your project?
You're certainly right that in the early days, as we're in active development, it makes sense for us to have sort of hold it a little closer, be more involved in making decisions, and mostly just making sure that it can survive before we sort of release it.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, I think the protocol should be pretty, fully baked and shouldn't,
mm-hmm.
Require, sort of once everything's fine tuned and the rules are set, that'll be the time for us to sort of step back and let the community run it.
Let the dice roll at that point.
That's sort of the plan, right? We want us to be owned, by the people and controlled by the people. We want to create these marketplaces, which are like I said, controlled by a set of rules.
Sure.
And not, any one entity.
Oh.
And we think what we're building is too important that no one person, no one company, no one country should have, control or ownership of it.
And I think the people respect you for that, obviously, Josh. Right around the world. That's the whole reason why blockchain is so attractive, to the masses. If we could talk now in a little bit more detail about your partners, because obviously, you have Pantera as a major investor, but you also have alluded to some serious investors with regard to the dApps coming onto the platform. So let's talk about, prospective investment. Are there any others that are coming on board in any way?
We were backed by Pantera, who like you said, incredible partner to us, have been incredibly supportive. We also have some very well-known angel investors
mm-hmm.
from here in San Francisco that are part of the project as well, and we're very well capitalized from them.
Right.
Right now, we're collecting interest on our website, so we have a pre-sale form on our website. People who are interested in, we haven't announced anything yet,
mm-hmm.
But anyone who's interested and wants to be updated is if and when we have announcements on that front. The form on our website is the best place to go for that.
I see. Well, that's really interesting. So in terms of roadmap as well, Josh, there's some exciting things happening in 2018. Particularly, you obviously had your beta release, or it's happening now. Is that correct?
So we have a prototype up on the testnet.
Yep.
We're working really hard to get additional functionality built, and we want to do a mainnet launch, and that'll be at the same time that we release the token
mm-hmm.
to the community as well, and do our first token distribution event. And so we're telling people Q3 is sort of our roadmap for that. And we're so we're working really hard to make sure we hit that.
So Q3 is not far away, mate. It's not far away at all. So that you're excited about the Origin being released at that point. But let's talk about the plan in terms of the token release and how you plan on sort of the ICO move, perhaps.
We don't have anything to announce today on exactly when that's going to be or how it's going to be structured.
Mm-hmm.
But again, sign up on our website, join our Telegram group. It's the best way to sort of stay up to date with any announcements or any
mm-hmm.
news on those fronts.
And no doubt you are planning an ICO. Would that be fair to say now on record?
We're certainly looking at, as long as we can do it in accordance with local laws and securities laws and regulations. As you know, it's a ever-changing regulatory environment out there, and so we're working closely with our lawyers at Cooley to see exactly what we can and can't do. So,
well, it's great to hear that you are well on board with regulations and obviously compliance. That's going to be fundamental, and I'm sure anyone listening in, whether they're considering you as a prospective investment or whether they just want to know more about it, that's going to be essential to know that you take that seriously. Just in terms of vision though, Josh, if we're thinking about, a much more broader sense for the next, let's say, few years, what's your really, the thing you're really most excited about with the Origin protocol?
We're excited to have this actually used, right? I think if you look at where we're at in this progression, we don't have a whole lot of examples we can point to of real adoption or use of these apps. There's a lot of people who believe in this is the future, buy into this vision. But to date we have CryptoKitties is sort of the most successful app that we can point to, and so we want to change that, right? We want to actually create usable applications that are actually valuable and adding real utility to people's lives. And so that's really our vision here. We want to create something that's actually going to be used. We want to be one of the first examples of dApps that people are using and actually are just like incredibly useful to people. And it's breaking out of just speculation and just hype and the sort of futuristic thing that's coming,
right,
and actually have something that's very tangible that people can actually use, and that's really what our goal is.
Right, and it's interesting because we hear that time and time again. We are so looking forward to the times when blockchain becomes an absolute for utility. So on behalf of all the people who wanted to know more about Origin Protocol, the platform, the sharing economy ecosystem you are building, thank you very much, Josh Fraser, for your time. We're following you, if that's okay, as you evolve into a successful enterprise.
Yes,
it's been a privilege. And is there anything you want to add, Josh, just as a final note?
Well, thank you so much, Brad, for having me on. Thank you to everyone who's watching this all the way to the end. If you want to learn more about Origin, check out our website. It's originprotocol.com. Join our Telegram community. We're just Origin Protocol on Telegram as well. And we'd love to stay in touch. And if you believe in this mission and want to be a part of it, we'd love to have you join us, whether that's contributing code or being a part of this community and helping us spread the word about decentralized marketplaces.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, as you said before, the starting place is certainly Telegram. It's ever expanding in your case. So Josh Fraser, it's been an honor, the co-founder of Origin. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk to you very soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Brad.
Cheers.